Good morning, everyone. I hope you're doing great this morning. Had a relatively quiet weekend. Weekends are when people come out, because they don't camp all the time like I get to. And I get to because I want to. I'm trying to find a place for my son and myself, but I will not spend a lot of time there. Where are they? There's geese out over there somewhere. There's a whole bunch of them on the bank. You can hear them. The sound of the wild. See, you're missing this if you're not out here. And I've always got a loose hair somewhere that's just not cooperating. Here we go. All right. So I have no excuses for this morning. It just exists. It's here. If you're not here, what's your excuse? All right, I'm still cockeyed a little bit. I'm sitting on a bench that's warped, and I'm feeling like I'm not facing the camera right. But I know that's my excuse. Where is my mouse? There it is. So, for today, the title is, What's Your Excuse? Now, I gave an excuse when I skipped a day because I said it was raining. There's a goose flying around. You may get to see that whole flock of them on the other bank behind me take off at some point. They're over to the left. If you remember the comedian Red Skelton, he used to do his impression, Gertrude and Heathcliff, the two seagulls. He put his hands up under his armpits, and he'd flap a little bit. One seagull would say to the other one, I'm not going to try to impersonate him like he did. You see that ship down there? That's the ship of fools, as they're flying over it. And the other seagull says, why? How can you tell? The first seagull says, well, they're all looking up, aren't they? That's his level of humor. Simple, basic, no cussing, no bad language or scenarios. Just simple humor of the day, which we don't have anymore. Okay, so I give an excuse for missing it because of the rain. I didn't get it recorded in time. My excuse was to you, but it was actually to God. What do you think God would say? What if life depended on it? You'd get out there and record it in the rain, with or without an umbrella. I did have to go to the pavilion, and I could have done that. I could have gotten in my car, driven over there, gotten out, and recorded it. You see, there's answers that I have someone that I was mentored by that said there's no problems in this world ever. There are opportunities, not problems. Edison, when asked, how many times did you do that before you figured it out? And he said, well, probably 100 times. And the reporter then said, so you failed 100 times. And Edison said, no, I found 100 ways it didn't work. They're not flying over there, they're just sitting on the ground. And now I have a hornet on my screen. Get out of here. They can be ornery. I get bit by They're stung by hornets all the time. I never get stung by bees or anybody else. And the fish just jumped. Nature's all around me, and that hair is still not playing right. Okay, we'll do it this way, the way you do a kid. Okay, see if that helps. All right, so we're just kind of talking right now, but let's get into some of this. I posted a funny about running, an excuse for not running, and I had a lot of other ones join in with their excuses. And, I can't run. Well, don't if you can't. I am not in any way trying to come down on anybody who has an excuse. We have to be in your shoes to understand it, and I'm not. But God hears all these excuses. So we're going to look at a couple of examples here. We're going to look in John. Why we have excuses and God doesn't care. He cares that we're concerned, but He's got a opportunity to show you His power. So turn with me to John 5. I'm going to start reading in verse 1. After this, there was a feast of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. So it's a Holy Week. Now there is at Jerusalem by the sheep market a pool, which is called in the Hebrew tongue Bethesda, having 5 porches. They've uncovered that, so they know where that's at. John 5:3. In these lay a great multitude of impotent folk, of blind, halt, withered, waiting for the moving of the water. The belief was, they have a bunch of them go there in the air. I don't know if they're going to fly into your screen or not. They're going to go over there and land. They're too far away. I don't have a telephoto lens on this. Okay, so waiting for the movement of the water. The belief was that if the water moved, the first person to get into the pool would be healed. If you can imagine the rush of people trying to get into the pool. For an angel went down at a certain season into the pool and troubled the waters, caused them to ripple. And whoever then, first after the trembling of the water, stepped in was made whole, or whatever disease he had. I think God is just toying with them. You don't have to get into or the angel was, you don't have to get into a rippling pool to be healed. God can do it anytime He wants. We're going to see that here in a second. And a certain man was there, which had an infirmity 38 years. So I don't know how old he was, but he was at least 38. And when Jesus saw him lie and knew that he had been now a long time in that case, He saith unto him, Wilt thou be made whole? Do you want to be healed? Basically. And the impotent man answered him, Sir, I have no man when the water is troubled to put me into the pool, but while I am coming, another steppeth down before me. His excuse to God, to Jesus, but to God. I can't get down there. Jesus wasn't going to have any of that. In verse 8, Jesus says unto him, Rise, take up your bed and walk. Didn't ask him to do anything, didn't ask him to say anything. He just said, Rise up and walk. Now, He can do that with anything. Now, God doesn't hand out miracles all the time like He did back then that are open that people can see. He's working behind the scenes all the time. There are miracles happening every day, all the time for all of us that we don't know about. But back then, Jesus was trying to prove to the people who He was. And so He did this. In one case he said, why was this person made like this? For the glory of God. Because he healed them in front of everybody and they saw it. This guy was healed in front of everybody else at the pool. I wonder if they were all coming to him afterwards. Verse 9, and immediately the man was made whole. The man was made whole. God can do miraculous stuff when he chooses to. Now, don't be discouraged if you haven't had that. Like I said, outward miracles like that don't happen a lot. But they could. And the only block is you. You have to believe. Now, this man didn't know what to believe, so Jesus just gave it to him. No requirements. We don't know what was in the man's heart. We don't know what his background was. He might have been some kind of a religious person. I'm leaving that open. We don't know his background. He may have walked around and fed the homeless. We don't know. God picked him out. Immediately man was made whole and took up his bed and walked. And on the same day was the Sabbath. So this was a Saturday. Friday night to Saturday night's the Sabbath. And Jesus healed on the Sabbath. You're not supposed to do anything on the Sabbath, according to their rules that were written by men. We have the rules of the Sabbath written by God, but they had to add to them. So they wrote 2 other books to go with the Bible, the Old Testament back then, where each generation got to see a prominent Pharisee or somebody pin their own interpretation. It was sort of a notoriety for them. But this was their interpretation. The same interpretation that didn't understand who Jesus was and hung him on a cross. So they didn't have the gift of God to write in the book. These are the Talmud and the Mishnah. They're commentaries. If you've got a Bible commentary, it's okay to have that. It would be good if you had a couple so you have counteracting views. Somebody posted a Bible comparison of King James and NIV, and there were a couple of scriptures that were missing, a couple of verses that were missing. And the reasoning behind it was, well, they were duplicated someplace else. So I'm just not going to put these in. Don't do that. You're saying, well, it was a mistake to have put them in the first place. How do you know? See, that's an excuse. Don't make excuses for you or for God or for the writer. Just leave things alone. Now, if it's a brand new interpretation and you can't find where it was in the original and it's in this one, I would put it in brackets or something. And put a footnote. Some versions include this. I wouldn't take it out. The early scribes who used to meticulously, line for line, write the Bible. They'd have a source and they'd have their new one that they were creating. You couldn't go into a printing press or a printing shop and say, copy this. Scribes had to copy it word for word. And sometimes they'd miss things. Sometimes they would not get it exact, but we've found enough copies to know where they made a mistake. And scholars have fixed it. Finding the original was helpful. Finding the Dead Sea Scrolls was real helpful on the books that they found. Isaiah specifically, but they found other pieces in most of them were in pieces because these were written on papyrus, on paper. And if they hadn't been in sealed jars in a desert cave, they wouldn't have survived. People honestly try to do what's right. Sometimes they get it wrong. I have one of the guys here is walking up to, he's doing his daily walk. See, if you can't run, you walk. This man's a little overweight, white hair, but he's still walking. See, there's no excuses. If you can't walk a mile, walk a half a mile. Walk to the end of the driveway and back. But I'll be right back. All right, I'm back, and you can see the sun's breaking through the clouds a little bit, so the video quality will change a little bit. Whenever I get an opportunity, I try to talk to people in the camp. Get to talk about God. That's the fun part. Okay, let's see, where was I? I think we finished John, so I think we're going to go over to 2 John. It's still John, and talk a little bit here. There are plenty of reasons for us to be doing God's work and not making excuses about not being able to. We can be afraid of doing something the first time. You know, if we're a kid and we're trying to walk, sometimes, you know, if you got carpet on the floor, it's better off just to let you fall and keep trying. But you can actually, you know, you can hold the kid's hand and let them walk with you. Okay, 2 John 1:4. I rejoice greatly that I found, he's writing to some people here, found that thy children walking in the truth. And hang on, I've got pop-ups coming on because I had my computer shut down, and it's going to tell me about all the things I should have that I don't need. Okay, 2 John 1:4. Rejoice greatly that I found of thy children walking in the truth, as we have received a commandment from the Father. Yeah, we've received a commandment. We have received a commandment from the Father. And now I beseech thee, lady, as he's writing, not as though I wrote a new commandment unto thee, but that which we had from the beginning, that we love one another. That's our commandment. When Jesus was asked, what's the greatest of all the commandments? Love God, all your mind, soul, and spirit. Love your neighbor as yourself. If you follow those two, everything else will be in line. So we are to love everybody. It's easy to love those that are lovable, but we're to love our enemies. We're to love those that are not doing good things. Because inside that is a soul that we need to reach for Jesus. The Spirit has to do the upfront work, has to prepare that soul to receive the truth. If they haven't been prepared, they won't want to hear from you. Walk away, it's not time yet. Don't give up, but walk away. Constantly be testing the waters. I got this lake behind me. If I were a fisherman, I'd have experience fishing. I'd try some things that I know have worked in the past. We do the same thing with people. We're fishers of men. You got to cast out and see what you can get. Now, they were commercial fishermen, so they use large nets. But individually, we have a rod and reel, and we can cast out. And if nobody's taking a bite, we change the bait. We're finding a bait that the fish want that day. We're finding what the people need, and they will flock to it. All we have to do is just keep trying. And I'll apply the same comment about fishing as going for people and helping them. A bad day fishing is better than a good day at work. Well, if you're fishing for people, it's the same thing. You meet good people, people that are trying, that they don't all have the answers yet. Nobody has the answers. The only one that does is Jesus. I think if we got everybody all together, we might come up with a thimbleful of answers when the universe is far vaster. 2 John 1:6, And this is love, that we walk after his commandments. This is the commandment. As you have heard from the beginning, you should walk in it. For many deceivers have entered into the world, who confess not that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh. He's not accepted. He was here. God walked on this earth in the beginning, in Garden of Eden it did, but in our times relative, he walked on this earth, and he was refused by the religious people. Confess not that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh. This is a deceiver and an antichrist, little a, antichrist. Look to yourselves that we lose not those things which we have wrought, but that we receive a full reward. There is a reward in heaven for following his commandments. They're crowns. I don't know where they're going to be kept. We're going to have a bookcase someplace with crowns on little stands. That would seem ostentatious, but I guess we don't have pride in heaven, so I don't know that there'd be a reason for it. We just throw them in a drawer. They're figurative crowns, I'm sure. It will be evident in what we do afterwards. Heaven will be heaven, regardless of what we are going to be doing. But we have the parables of the talents. The one that invested it will be put in charge of many later on. The ones that didn't, they have theirs taken from them and given to somebody else. They won't be getting to heaven. But there were, out of the three, there were two investors and one that buried it. The two investors will have work in heaven. So I don't know what we're going to do. We won't have to work, I don't think so. But I don't know. I don't know what heaven's like. We don't have anybody but one who's been, well, there are two beings in this world that have been back and forth. Satan goes back and forth from heaven to earth. He lives in heaven. He doesn't live down here. That ought to tell you something. But Jesus has come back and forth. Has he gone back and forth multiple times? I don't know. The Bible doesn't really say anything about that, but he could. He could walk amongst us any time, any day, and we wouldn't know it because he could change his appearance. He said, you took care of me, you fed me. Well, when did you do that? Well, when you took care of that homeless people, or when you fed those children, you were taking care of me. Well, was he really, literally in there, or is that just figurative? We don't know. But he sees and knows everything, so that's a good thing. Okay, so we're good to come up with excuses. I've come up with them all the time. You do too. Try to find solutions to those excuses and not use them if you don't have to. Try to figure out if you can let God miraculously lead you through whatever you're doing, regardless of the situation. The more you can get confidence in that, the more you can do. I don't imagine Billy Graham, when he started, could get up in front of 50,000 people and speak. I've gotten up in front of people. It's nerve-wracking. I couldn't have done these videos in my youth. I have no problem doing them now. Just let God teach you. Ask God for help and let him teach you. You don't go to school for a day. It may take days, years of learning to where you get to where you want to be or where God wants you to be. They're going to be the same because God knows what our hearts want. He's going to put us where we want to be. You're going to be happy with this choice. You may not like the direction initially because you've never been there before. That's natural. Let God lead you. And try not to use excuses to God. Because God can make anything happen. Till we meet in the clouds, God bless.